Why is it that we don't seem to be able to adjust ourselves to the physical environment around us? Why is it that in this culture it represents in a unique fashion the law of diminishing returns? That our success is a failure? That we are building up an enormous technological civilization which seems to promise the fulfillment of every wish at the touch of a button. And yet, as in so many fairy tales, when the wish is finally materialized, they are like fairy gold. They are not really material at all. In other words, so many of our products, our cars, our homes, our clothing, our food, it looks as if it were really the instant creation of pure thought. That is to say, it's thoroughly and substantially lacking what we call, or what we say calls, wine and body. And in so many other ways, the riches that we produce are meaningless. And as a result of that, we are frustrated. We are terribly frustrated. We feel that the only thing is to go on and keep getting more and more. As a result of that, the whole landscape begins looking like the nursery of a spoiled child who's got too many toys and is bored with them and throws them away as fast as he gets them, plays with them for a few minutes. Also, we are dedicated to a tremendous war on the basic material dimensions of time and space. We want to obliterate their limitations. We want to get everything done as fast as possible. We want to convert the rhythms and the skills of work into cash, which indeed you can buy something with, but you can't eat it. And then we rush home to get away from work, to begin the real business of life, to enjoy ourselves. You know, for the vast majority of American families, what seems to be the real point of life, what you rush home to, is to just watch an electronic reproduction of life. You can't touch it, it doesn't smell, and it has no taste. You might think that people getting home to the real point of life in a robust material culture would go home and to a casal, like a banquet or an orgy of lovemaking or a riot of music and dancing. But that's nothing of the kind for the majority in this culture. It turns out to be this purely passive contemplation of a twittering screen. You see mile after mile of darkened houses with that little electronic flickering screen in the room. Everybody's isolated watching this thing. And there's no real communion with each other at all. And the isolation of people into a private world of their own is really the creation of a mindless crowd. And so we don't get with each other except for public expressions of getting rid of hostility like football or prized fighting. And even in those types of spectacles one sees on the television, it's perfectly proper to exhibit people struggling and slugging and slaying each other. But oh dear no, not people loving each other, except in a rather restrained way. One can only draw the conclusion that the assumption underlying this is that expressions of physical love are far more dangerous than expressions of physical hatred. And it seems to me that a culture that has that sort of assumption is basically crazy and devoted, unintentionally indeed, but nevertheless, in fact, devoted, not to survival, but to the actual destruction of life. Hey, you guys, that was not a lecture that was from me. That was my favorite lecture that I've ever heard. I've heard on pretty much every Alan Watts lecture there is. And he was a man that was ahead of his time and a awesome visionary speaker. And sometimes when I get caught up in some negative stuff, a lot of times I'll listen to some Alan Watts and it brings me out of it because he's such a logical thinker. He puts my thoughts into words a lot of times. And there was a video on YouTube, it's my favorite video, that had this lecture. And since you can't really share videos on YouTube, it's kind of weird, not how it is on Facebook. I recreated it and I'm proud that I recreated it. So if anything ever happens to me, my son will know that I loved this ideology, and there's a reason why. If you listen to it, then you'll know why. And since there's been so much negativity in the comments sections and just bashing and just absolute hate, and I can tell a lot of people in this movement are getting stressed out, and it makes me sad to see that. I mean, there's going to be negativity in everything. But when you have your comment section just feeding into it with 1,000 times more negativity, it just makes everything worse, I guess, and more stressful. And you feel like you're being attacked, so you feel like you have to attack. And I don't think people want to do that. I think this movement was supposed to be something that was visionary, that brought us together. Our human existence is far more meaningful and far more complex than any piece of paper or anything out there. And I hope that we can come together to realize that this existence that we're living is, we can't even put into words exactly what it is. So all the words we've been using to describe our lives and describe how we feel, or this and that, it's just a moment in a vast universe. That's it. It's so tiny. It's so minute. It's so little, And I think that we need to open our eyes to realize there's so much more out there than what we're allowing ourselves to see. Thanks you guys for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. I love you. Bye.